Hello everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Power Patrol model rocket from Estes. Now they're calling this a level 2, but this should go together pretty easily. Now you may notice here my packaging's all squashed. This arrived that way, but it doesn't look like the interior part was affected. So we'll go ahead and build this. Let's find our instructions and parts list and make sure we have everything. Okay, so first of all we've got the body tube, which already has the shock cord attached to it as well as the launch lug. I'm just going to check down inside, make sure nothing's hiding in there. Okay, we've got a decal set. Nose cone, that's a really cool pattern, I think. And then we've got a small parts bag here, and this includes the motor retainer, fin can, parachute, fins. This thing that looks like just a yellow square is a clear decal that's used to reinforce the launch lug. And then we've got the base here for the nose cone. Okay, so this will require a little bit of gluing and such, but other than that, this is going to be a fairly easy build. So I'm going to clear most of this away and then we'll get started. The first thing we'll do is assemble the fin can here. And so this is going to gather just half on another half. Now one half has little pins in it here, very small. The other half has little holes. Those are going to go together like that. Okay, so we need to glue this together. Now they show using a tube type model cement like this one. You can also use a brush on type of about medium viscosity here. You don't want it really runny. And I prefer to do the brush on type just because I've got a little more control with it. But you can use either one here. And so we're going to glue on one side here all of the parts that will go right together directly. Alright, so we'll make sure we get the little holes and pins. Alright, but don't glue down in there. This is where all the fins are going to go. Alright, but we will glue here and along here. And you don't need lots of glue, just a thin film, regardless of the type of glue that you're using. And so I'm going to hold this for about 30 seconds and then set it aside to dry completely. While the glue on the fin can is drying, I'm going to skip down here first of all, and we'll do the reinforcement of the launch lug. So for that we're going to need this square clear decal, and of course we'll need the launch lug. Now this has got some glue smears here and things like that. I'm going to just take those off just using a fingernail here. Want to be careful. I'm not using a hobby knife because I don't want to break anything here. Alright, so this is still kind of globby. I just said I don't want to use the hobby knife, but I'm going to very carefully remove this. Now, not all kits are this gooey and such. And so I'm trying to be very careful here not to cut the cardboard. Okay, we've got some excess here too, and this is just aesthetics. it'll launch even with the glue blobs on it. Okay, now I'm going to take this decal here, just peel this off. Sometimes easier said than done. Okay, now I want to be careful here. I don't want to just slap this on. First of all, we're going to try and center it as much as possible. Well, that thing just wants to grab. I've got a nice identifying thumbprint on there. Okay, so first I'm just, whoops, get back here. I don't want to do that yet. Alright, so first I'm going to squash down here the center part. And instead of just letting this wrap around, I'm first going to take a fingernail and run it into the edge there. Now I've got another big glue blob, so this is probably going to be moot. Alright. The idea here is to not have an air gap going along the side of the launch lug there. Alright, now we'll smooth that one out. Alright, now this one can be set aside. We're going to skip down here next to our nose cone. Okay, so there's the nose cone itself, and then the base was in the little parts package here again. Alright, this just fits in here. Just do a quick test fit. Again, we're going to use the plastic cement here, and either type is fine. Okay, and we're just going to put a bead of glue right on the inside of the nose cone here. It does not need to go far up into it. Now you want a nice even bead of glue here, but not a big globby one, because that will have the potential to melt the base there, and we don't want that warped. Alright, so I'm just moving my base there back and forth a few times to seat it in the glue, and then this also will be set aside to dry. Another thing we can do while we're waiting for glue to dry is to assemble the parachute. Now, in most Estes kits, there's not much assembly to be done here. Okay, they're pre-strung, and we don't have to do that part, thankfully. But what I'm doing here is just gathering up the loops of the shroud lines here. Alright, and then in my other hand, I'm grabbing the center of the parachute sheet. Okay, and now I can move these back and forth here, both the sheet and the shroud lines, until we get all of the corners in roughly the same point, like that. Okay, now we have two options. In the instructions, they tie this directly to the nose cone. Okay, so my nose cone glue is dried enough that we can handle it. And what we're going to do is simply pass the loops through. Alright. The eyelet there. There we go. Okay, once you've got that, regather the loops. Alright, so you have a big loop now. And you're going to pass the entire parachute through that and then pull it tight, and that will form a knot here. Now I'm not going to do that because I don't like to tie my parachutes directly to the nose cones. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and set the nose cone aside here. Once again, I'm going to find my loops. Okay, I'm going to do just the same thing. All right. Now, instead of tying this to the parachute, I'm going to tie it to a snap swivel like this one here. Snap swivels you can find at just about any place that sells fishing tackle. It's not included in the kit, but they're not very expensive. And what I'm going to do now is pass my loops here through the swivel side, the round side there, just like I did with the nose cone eyelet. And I'm always keeping tension somewhere on here so that the loops don't change size relative to each other. Okay, so that's hanging there. Now I'm going to pass the entire snap swivel through the loops and pull the loops downward and just pull that whole thing tight. Okay, make sure I'm still reasonably where I had it. And if you don't like it there, you can just loosen that knot and try again. Now the size of the snap swivel doesn't really matter for low power rockets as long as the snap part here, when we put that on, is freely movable around that eyelet. We don't want something that's going to get bound sideways or things like that. Okay, so that's really the major consideration in the size. All right. Now, when you've got this where you want it, it's a good idea to put just a little dab of white glue or wood glue on it. And that's just to keep that knot from unraveling. So it doesn't take a whole lot. And just kind of work that into the knot there. And then when we're ready to launch, you can put the parachute on to the nose cone there. But then you can also take it off again. So a lot of Rocketeers don't like to keep their parachutes inside their rockets for storage. So they'll just, in this case, they can just unclip this, put the parachute wherever they're going to put their parachutes, hang it up on a wall, whatever. And then on launch day, you put it back on. You can also change different sizes here. Now for this rocket, that's not going to be a big deal, but maybe you want to put a big streamer on it instead of the parachute because you've got a really windy day. Okay, so in that case you would also have a streamer that has a snap swivel. You take the parachute off, snap the streamer on, launch as you would normally. Okay, so it looks like my fin can is about done, and we're going to put on the fins. Now you'll need the fins out of that small parts package there. Okay, and we have 4 of them, and that's why we want to make sure that this is fully dry, because 2 of the fins are going to go into that glue seam area there. First thing I'm going to do is simply dry fit these. So you pop them into those holes and push forward. Okay, I'm just going to do that here with all of them. Make sure all of my holes are in the right shape. All right, now those that are on seams are a little bit snug, but that's better than being too loose there. So all of those are going to go on fine. Now in our instructions here, it shows gluing the fin and then putting it on. I'm going to do it a little bit differently, and the reason I'm going to is because I've had a lot of instances where we put the glue on the fin and we put it in there and we push it up and it gets about halfway, so you end up with a fin that's hanging, you know, instead of all the way up like this, it only gets to about, you know, that far. And the problem is here, in order for this to actually launch and be recovered safely, that fin has to be flush with this part of the fin can. It can't overlap the threads or we won't be able to put the engine retainer on. Okay. So instead what I'm going to do is go ahead and put all of the fins in. Oop, okay, now you see what happened there? Okay, that means my glue is not as dry as I thought, and what I'm going to have to do now, I'm going to take the fins back out. Okay, and I'm going to apply a little bit more glue on there. Oop, don't want it there. It's okay. Alright, I'll put that back together, and we're going to have to be more patient here. Okay, so I'm going to go back and let this dry for a good 30 minutes at least. And this actually highlights one of the things about this kit and other kits like it. I've got some up in the threads. All right, if you do get glue in the threads, wipe that off as soon as you can. Okay, but these types of fin cans that Estes uses on a lot of its easy to assemble rockets, the 3-fin ones are fine because none of those ever go on a seam. But the 4-fin versions almost always have two of the fins on those seams there, and that's a weak point. Okay. Now, something else that will come in handy here is I've got some small clamps, and these are great for holding things together like this. You can get them in a variety of sizes. I got a variety pack of these at a hardware store for like 10 bucks, something like that, and it's for like 20 clamps or more. Since we are waiting once again for glue to dry, really the only thing left that we can do at this point is to apply the decals. Okay, and so the decals all go on the body tube, so it doesn't really matter if we have the fins on or not. Okay, now I have just washed my hands, and this is to help minimize fingerprints. All right, now this is a self-stick decal, and the packaging indicates it goes toward the front of the rocket. Now, one of the problems with this type of decal is pretty much once it sticks, it doesn't want to come back up again, so we want to try and get it on the first try here. And that's just loosely sticking now. I want to make sure that's more or less straight. It looks pretty good. If you miss, you might be able to gently lift it off sometimes, but not always. So if you get it crooked and it starts lifting up the black, just leave it. Okay, so now I'm just going to go and take my finger here and smooth that decal on. Alright, getting rid of the air bubbles and such. Okay, and then we have an Estes decal here, and that is meant to go toward the aft of the Power Patrol decal itself. Okay, so kind of the same way, we want to get this right the first time. Nope, that's not it. And I may be stuck with it. Yep, okay. So we'll just go ahead and smooth that in. Alright, everything right now is depending on glue to dry, so we'll just be patient here. My re-glue should be dry by now. And so once again, as I had started, we're going to put the fins in first without any glue. Okay, and that was in one of the seams. I'm going to try another one on the other seam to make sure we're not going to have the same problem there. That all looks good. Okay, and as you slide these in, that base there needs to be flush with this part of the fin can. It can't be hanging over into the threaded area. All right, I'm going to put my other two fins on. Right, now I'm going to use a very low viscosity, extra thin brush-on cement here to permanently attach the fins. What I'm going to do is just run this along those bases. Right, and then the glue will simply be drawn in by capillary action. And if you happen to miss or you overshoot or something like that, get the glue or you don't want it, just leave it alone. This glue, once it's dry, is really hard to see. Whereas if you try and wipe it, it'll make a smear that'll be very visible. Now, just as a test fit, I'm going to put the retainer nut on there. Alright, so this is going to screw on like this. Now, I don't want to leave it here where I might have gotten glue down on the threads, so I'm just going to let that dry for a while before we put it into the body tube. The glue on the fins is dry, and so now we can go ahead and insert the fin assembly here into the body tube. Now they show this again using tube type cement. You could also use a gel type super glue. If you're into it and know how to work with it, you can even use epoxy on this. Okay, now this is fairly short. I would prefer a little bit longer insertion point. And what I'm going to do here is roughen this up just a little bit. I'm just using an emery board here. You could use some 100 grit sandpaper, and this doesn't have to be extensive. I'm just taking that shiny finish down a little bit, and this will help the glue adhere better to the assembly. I'm going to go ahead and use the tube type cement for this part. You can still use a brush on cement, a medium viscosity one that kind of holds in place. Alright, and I'm just going to run a bead just inside the edge here. Okay, now something to be aware of is that the launch lug has to be centered between two of the fins. Alright, so I'm just going to now stick this in, kind of sighting down there. Alright, once it's in, move it back and forth a little bit to help seat the glue. Alright, and once again, we're going to let this dry. The glue between the fin can and the body tube is dry, and so now we just need to put everything together here. Alright, so take the free end of the shock cord, tie it onto the base of the nose cone here with a double knot or 2 half hitches. Alright, pull that from all directions to make sure it's seated well. Now we don't want it this long. We want to cut that little free end back to about 1/4 inch or 5 to 6 millimeters there. And this lessens the chance that we'll get it stuck between the shoulder and the body tube. Okay, now if you like, you can also put a little drop of white or wood glue here on that knot once more. Okay, just a little tiny amount, and this just helps to hold it in place. Now if you've tied the parachute onto the nose cone, that part's already done. If you want with the snap swivel, you can go ahead and attach that now. Right, now if you're preparing this for launch, before you put this together, put about 3 pieces of recovery wadding down inside there. Okay, for the parachute, you'll find lots of different opinions on how to fold parachutes here. My current favorite is to line up the corners with each other when you fold the sheet in half. So we've got 2 corners there, 2 corners here, and 2 corners off camera down here. Okay, and then once you've got that, fold the corners onto the center ones. So this side will come over, all right, lining up those corners. And then the other side will come over that, also lining up the corners there. So we get something that looks kind of like an old-fashioned kite. All right, now take your shroud lines, find about the midpoint there, and draw those up onto the parachute sheet. Okay, now if you're using a launch lug, the launch lug should stick out here. If you tied this directly, leave about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters or so hanging between the parachute and the nose cone. Alright, now we're going to take each edge here and fold that over on top of each other, making this spike. Alright, then you're going to take the tip of the spike and you're going to fold that down onto the corners as well. And then take the edges and fold or roll them together, however works best for you. Alright, so that now we have kind of a cylinder here. Alright, take all the rest of the shock cord here, stuff it down inside. Alright, and then finally, without losing the shock cord again, okay, we're going to take our cylinder of parachute and stuff that down in. This should go in very smoothly. If it is not, make sure you don't have something catching inside there, or you may need to re-roll it. Alright, and then finally put the nose cone on. Now you can see that's already very loose, and if we do a shake test here, that falls right out. So we don't want that. If your nose cone is too loose, just add a little bit of masking tape to the shoulder. Now we're not taping this to the tube, we're just adding a little bit more friction to it and increasing the diameter ever so slightly. And I usually start with about half of a circumference here. All right, now if we put that on and do a shake here, nothing's happening. All right, but I can still move that forward with just a little bit of force. And that's about what we need. Now this can change due to humidity and temperature, so you always want to check this before every launch. Okay, and so this is my completed Power Patrol. I hope you had fun building this with me. Have a great launch and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.